Hi everyone. So in this video we leveraged the refactoring from last time in order to create a new test case for our product editor. The story would go like this. As a developer, I want to ensure products can be created with price information via the form so that I can make sure product creation is possible in all scenarios. So I think we already have one test case here for our customer edit screen, and this means we already have something to build upon. The difference is here that what we now additionally would like to do is to check like the inline table that defines the prices, so we can actually take a look at the product price edit screen here. And I'm sorry, this is not product price, but we actually need product edit. This one I meant. And here we have not only our form at the top, but we also have this prices section. All right, so then let's take a look how we can achieve that. So first of all, I will just copy this test here and make it a product edit test. And additionally, what we can do similarly to what we've done before in the last video, just replacing all the terms here and also replacing the lowercase terms. Okay, so here we also should extend the web integration test that we created as our last refactoring. So this means this is also not currently in place here. So let's just fix that. And okay, so with that we can now take a look on what to do here. So first of all, let's take the very first scenario. Given a valid product, when we save the product through the form, then the product is saved. So I think we can even just disable that and see if this behavior is already working. So since it's the very first so of course it's not working because we just set the wrong values. And here, unfortunately, our compiler will actually not help us identifying that, because here we are just referencing the components. So, but let's fix that. So we have a name field. The other thing we also don't need. Let's make it a full product, and we call this simply name probably. And then we set this text field. Before that we create this product editor, and then we save the form, and the operation result should succeed. And since our prices are not required, this should actually still be true. So what we can do now is to search the product by name, and here it's a little bit different. So in the customer edit screen test we had we looked up in the database by first name and then verified by the last name that it's actually the right one. So what we now, this is actually not really needed because we have a UUID here, so this means it should be unique. So probably I will just get rid of this and just say the saved product is present. So let's take a look and run this test case to see if this already works. Can meanwhile already look into the second test case here. So this scenario is given product without street. When save product through the form, then product is not saved. So if we look at our product entity, we will actually notice that there is a not another requirement for the name attribute. So this means we can basically do the very same thing here. And as we see already, the first test already is valid. We can actually, let's say, yeah, or let's actually just make the negative test and see that this also works. So if we here go ahead and say this will be the name field, and here actually we don't need this first name attribute, but instead what we just say is empty string, or actually it needs to be null, I guess. Let's double check. And yes, here we cannot really find that because we don't have, you know, the actual lookup attribute, which is the first name here, or as it has been before, the first name is not the one that we have the violation. But in our case with this name field, the name field is the lookup attribute. And then secondly, it is also, yeah, basically the field where we have this violation. So I think for now what we can do is just to check that the operation failed. And since we remove all entities here, what would be possible is to say that we just check on the amount. So this means we could make data manager load product class all list, and then has, or we could even say is empty. And hopefully this will actually, you know, be actually exactly empty value, or like an empty list actually. So let's double check that. And once we have that in place, okay, so it turned out to be true. This is good. Yeah, okay, so then what we can now do is actually, you know, going back to our test scenario, or like our feature request here, we would like to, you know, store the product with prices. So for that, let's create a second happy path test. And here we say given product with price, when save the product through the form, then the product and price are saved. Okay, so everything here still needs to be the same, so there's nothing special about it. This will also be our final success operation to see if this is actually true, like the product edit screen has been closed or committed successfully. And then afterwards we should also find the product. And what we now probably also need to do is that we have another block of ands here, where we will actually, you know, basically if we look at the product edit screen once again and go to the descriptor, then you will find that we have here this group table, and then, you know, also the buttons where we can interact with. So with our last refactoring, we have introduced this table interactions class. So this means that this is something that we can actually now leverage. So actually let's copy it over here from the product browse screen. So here we get our product table, or if we go here, then we can actually, you know, create this one or copy this one over, and then say this will be the product edit, and we will have the product price class, because this will be the entity that the table holds, and the prices, yeah, it should just be prices table. I mean, we can double check here. Yeah, this looks good. Okay, and once we have that, what we now need to do is to say, first of all, let's get, yeah, just create an instance variable here, and we will perform the create operation on it. And what we now can do is, what should now normally happen is that the new screen should be opened. And this is now the editor of the product price entity. So for that we have this other API which we introduced in the last video, which is called screen interactions. And here we already have an instance of that. So this means we can say find open screen and just give it a product price edit class. And if we look into the implementation of that, we actually have an assertion here, so probably we don't need to assert on that. So let's just assume that this actually comes back, and if not, then this API will tell us. Okay, so what would be the next step then? Yeah, so the next part would be that we just interact, because this editor has now a form that we need to interact with. So let's take a look at this one. We just have this form component here and an amount field and a unit field. So this means we can create a new form interaction out of this product price edit, and let's just say let's make a new variable, and this will be price form. And this price form we already have in this form interactions now a couple of more methods for setting number field value and setting enum field value, and this is actually which will help us now as well. So the first thing here is that we have the amount attribute, and this will be amount field, and then we have it will actually be a quick decimal value. And then the second attribute is enum field value, and here we have a unit field is our this is our combo box here, and the value that we should pass in is price unit dot day, for example. So perhaps right now let's actually perform the following. We will just do this debugging session here, so that you can follow along on what actually happens here, and that we also verify that our test setup is actually correct. All right, so the first thing is that we look up this price table here, and let's just hop over this, and as we see here, this price table interactions has actually now attribute of type table. And yeah, so probably we can, for example, look at the columns. So by the columns, you see that this is actually the right table that we interact with. So let's hop over this next one. And as we see here, there is now a problem. So let's take a look into this. So it happened during this create method here, and it says the click method returned a value, or the button object is actually null, and therefore it caused a null pointer exception. So let's take a look into this one. So probably this means that this button could not be found. So let's double check on that. And so here we have our product edit screen, and this button here is this create action or create button. And as you can see here, those buttons do not have IDs. I'm not sure if this is on purpose or has been generated on purpose without an ID, or if it's just a bug, because like if we go to the, for example, product browse screen, then you will see that the buttons actually do have an ID. So yeah, probably what we can just do is just go ahead here and also create a proper ID for those. And here we'll just do it an edit button, and this will be a remove button. So let's take a look if this already helps. But what we probably also need to do anyways is just make this a variable. Or perhaps what's even better is that so what I want to achieve is that I would like to get not a null pointer exception, but for example, an optional, exception that it's not found the component or something like this. So what we can do here is we could make it. Okay, so first let's look at where this is all used so that we do not introduce a problem. But as we see here, it's just in the edit button of the tables interactions class itself. So this means what we can do is to say optional of nullable, and then we will just return or like wrap it in an optional object. And what we now can do is or else throw. Then at least we get, a message saying that the optional was not actually present. So we can double check on this one here. If we just, take any kind of ID and just rerun this test case, then it actually should still cause an exception, but the exception should be now different. So let's take a look on how this looks. Yeah, so now we get back a Java util no such element exception in this method here. And this is already better. So, I mean, we could introduce dedicated exceptions for this scenario, but since our goal is not here to write a library that helps us building integration tests for the UI layer, I think this is already good enough. Okay, so then let's change that to this create button and run it once again and see what actually happens now, or at least if the test progresses after this line of code. So the test is now green, which is kind of interesting because it means that although this pop-up is, or this new screen for the product price is actually not saved and not stored, probably this entity has just been created without any prices. So I think we have to do a little bit more here. So what we can now do is we have this price form, and we can just, as we have done it here before, call save form, and it gives us back an operation result. And we can, now double check here. We can actually here double check that also this operation result from this price form has succeeded. So this means it would be the price form result. And here we have probably the product form result. Okay, so let's run this again and see if it still continues to work. All right, so this already does the trick. But what we now only check here is that we look up the attribute by look up the product by attribute, and then just check if the product is present. What we probably also want to verify is that the price has been stored. So for that, in order to make that happen, we can create a new assertion and say get prices. So this is an optional. So here we already check that it is present, so I can safely call the get method and then get prices. And since we assume, so first of all here we can check as size 1. So let's double check that and see how, or if it is already working, and if not, then we have to fix that. Okay, so this already works. We do not necessarily need to do, set up a fetch plan and so on in order to load the product prices with the product, but instead I would have assumed, or I assume that this is actually now coming, these prices are actually loaded by just lazy loading mechanisms. And because if you look here at the logic of the implementation, it just says, load the product, and then we pass in a condition, but we do not say anything about which attributes actually should be loaded. Okay, so, but anyway, so lazy loading is just fine in this case, so let's just continue with that. So this means we can here go ahead and say 0, and with that we can probably also now create a dedicated variable for it. And here we can double check on the amount, and the amount should have is equal to big decimal dot 10. All right, so let's double check this one, because here we passed in 10, so we can actually also make this a variable and say yes, both of those amount. Amount. Okay, so and here it already says no, this is not what we see. Okay, so this is one thing that you might stumble upon as well. So when this SRJ comparison here via the equals method does not actually work for big decimal values, so you can look this up in the internet basically. So the normal way on how to compare big decimal objects is by using the comparing to method instead of the equals method. So, and actually, if we look closely on what IntelliJ suggests here, there is another one, is equal by comparing to, because it understands that this get amount returns in big decimal. So with that, we can now retry and see if this already helps. Okay, so then let's create the corresponding variable here, and then we not only check the amount, but we check also the unit, and the unit should be day, and here it should be is equal to. So this means we can also say expected unit. So probably let's make it like this, and here also name it expected amount. So now we compare the price unit with the expected unit, and with that we basically have verified that the object that we got back is actually the one that we expected, or it actually has the correct values. Okay, so this looks very good. Just from just the sheer size of this test method is already quite huge. So I'm just wondering if we can somehow make that even a little bit more readable. So I mean, what we could probably do is to clean up this here, because this is actually not really relevant to our test case. And also what we have already in place is this test here, which actually does the same thing. Yeah, but I'm not 100% sure on how to do that right now, so probably let's just leave it as is and continue, or do it a little bit better next time. So here we now actually check the prices, and this we can also have a dedicated section. All right, so with that, let's push this change. and create a pull request. And with that, I think we are already done with our video, because we have already seen the tests are running. So yeah, I think we can close off this topic. Thanks for watching, and then see you next time.